After a year dominated by the coronavirus pandemic, we put your questions to three of Wales's senior politicians. Welcome to Wales Live. Good evening and thanks for joining us live as we put your questions about the pandemic to leading politicians. And after a day of big announcements about Christmas and beyond, there's certainly plenty to talk about tonight. So our panel: from Welsh Labour, the Health Minister Vaughan Gething, Paul Davies, leader of the Welsh Conservatives in the Senedd, and Plaid Cymru leader Adam Price. And thanks to all of you who've got in touch with us. Our first question is coming up after a quick reminder of the situation here in Wales.
Following the so-called firebreak lockdown between October and November, there was an initial fall in the rate of coronavirus cases. But in recent weeks, Wales has reported some of the worst rates in the UK and record numbers of Covid-19 patients in our hospitals. Today, First Minister Mark Drakeford said only 2 households plus a single person could meet for Christmas, and that the situation in Wales is now so serious that a stay-at-home lockdown with tighter restrictions will come into force on the 28th of December.
My question for the panel is, with cases increasing across Wales, should tougher rules be introduced before Christmas?
That was Philip England with that question from Swansea. Vaughan Gething, why wait? We qualify for Tier 4 now. Why wait?
Well, over the recent few weeks, of course, we have introduced tougher rules. Restrictions on hospitality, where people largely were arguing against them at the time. We'll this week move secondary schools to distance learning, and we've got restrictions in parts of our healthcare system. It's a very difficult balance in all of these because every choice we make comes with harm as well. So if we close non-essential retail, that would have an impact on jobs. It would also have an impact on people and their ability to get to Christmas. Many of our people in Wales live week to week on their pay packets. If we close non-essential retail today, that would essentially mean that our least well-off citizens couldn't do that. In all of this, we're trying to think about the balance of harms, about lives and livelihoods, and in announcing level 4 restrictions will come in over Christmas. We're giving people time to plan, because that in itself will be difficult for all of us, but necessary to save as many lives as possible.
Adam Price, would you lock down now?
I think there's a very strong case for that, because if you follow the logic of the government's own scientific advice, what they've said consistently is if you're in an emergency situation where you have to pull the emergency cord, if you like, then you're better off doing that earlier, because if you do it earlier, that means that the period of lockdown is shorter, and so all the other harms that Vaughan referred to are actually reduced, because you intervene earlier and therefore it has greater impact.
And you've always said that as a government, haven't you? You've always said that, and the First Minister said move early and there's more impact. You're not moving early here.
Well, that's exactly what we've done previously. For when we introduced our hospitality restrictions, because we know that can make a difference to the R rate, we were broadly opposed by other groups, both within the Senedd and outside. You won't see the impact of those until about this time and a bit further on. So we'll continue to act to do what we think is right to keep Wales safe.
Would you lock down now, Paul Davies?
The problem we've got is that the Welsh Government has been inconsistent. We have heard inconsistent messages from the government over the last few months. Now, you'll know, Bethan, that we've advocated a much more targeted approach, and if the government had actually adopted that targeted approach a few months back, perhaps we wouldn't be in this position.
I'm sorry, but that's rubbish.
Perhaps we wouldn't be in this position now, because we have heard inconsistent messages from the government. Because at the start of this pandemic, of course, we went into a national lockdown, but since then we've had local authority restrictions, we've had hyper-local lockdown restrictions, then we've had national measures, and now, of course, on Monday, they have actually published this coronavirus control plan. And to be fair, I agree that they have actually now published a plan, and they've also said, and the First Minister has confirmed this, that when the virus is back under control, then they will actually introduce a more targeted approach, which we've been advocating for a very long time. So it seems to me that they're actually coming round to our way of thinking.
On